Hello, I'm Mark Thielman with Payroll.org, and I'd like to welcome you to Employer of Record to Payroll and Back, Keys to Resilient Global Workforce Strategy. The material you're about to experience is copyrighted by federal copyright law. No portion of this webinar may be recorded, transcribed, or reproduced by any means without prior written permission from Payroll.org and Papaya Global. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. During this webinar, to ask a question or report a technical issue, type those in the questions panel to the right of the presentation screen and click Submit. If you have issues such as audio or slides not moving, refresh your browser and close other browsers as well as your email. You can resize or close any of the panels. Use the brown icons on the left to open them back up or restore your display back to its original state. And do be sure to turn off your pop-up blocker to be able to answer the polling questions. If you haven't already downloaded the handouts from the 24-hour reminder email, you can find those in the handouts panel right next to the Q&A tab on the right side of the screen. And with that, I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers for today. Gina Dorcelis, Director of Global Employment and Legal Counsel, and Angie Carrier, Global Payroll Expert Team Leader for the Americas, both with Papaya Global. Please welcome Gina and Angie.
Good morning.
Morning, good afternoon, good evening, all in APAC. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Mark indicated, I'm Gina Dorcelis, Director of Global Employment and also U.S. Legal Counsel for Papaya Global. Just a bit about myself. I'm an employment attorney licensed in New York and New Jersey. At Papaya, I manage a team of attorneys. I serve as the U.S. Legal Counsel and manage an attorney in Europe, Middle East and Israel, and in Singapore, covering all regions of the world, handling compliantly onboarding and offboarding our clients' global workers. And I'll hand it over to Angie to introduce herself.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Angie Carrier, and I lead up the Global Payroll Expert Team for Papaya Global in the Americas.
We're so excited to discuss with you this important topic today, making the case for a flexible global workforce and how that is critical to a company's success. The ease of transitioning from EOR to payroll and back, and the nuances in accomplishing those tasks. And this type of flexibility drives innovation and company resilience. We're also going to touch on navigating global compliance and providing you with a bit of tools to navigate those complexities. And of course, leaving some time for you to ask questions and answers, which is my favorite part of these webinars.
Well, just to set this scene, we picked out this quote. I think it's incredible. The secret of my success is that we have gone to exceptional lengths to hire the best people in the world. I think Steve had it right, and all the borders were open. He was a visionary in this field, and with current global changes, globalization, the skill shortages, we see his vision becoming a reality for more and more companies around the world.
And I think that is the key to company success. It's in the people. And Angie and Steve said it best. It's essentially in the people. That is what drives companies. And we make it our mission to go to great lengths to keep our workers happy.
Yes, it's excellent. Gina, I agree with you totally. I think we have a polling question.
Indeed we do. So let's get our morning started with these ladies in Papaya Global by asking our audience, what is the biggest challenge you face in managing a global workforce? Would it be A, keeping up with changing regulations, B, understanding diverse international laws, C, ensuring payroll accuracy across different regions, or D, the cost of hiring local expertise? We'll give everyone a short time to answer this, and you ladies can take a look at what's coming in live right now.
I almost think we need all of the above.
I was just thinking that, we get that question a lot. It's like, why don't you guys put all of the above in here?
Yes.
Actually, I have a feeling if we did put all of the above, none of the others would get answered. It would just be all of the above.
Right.
Anything surprising to you?
I don't think so. Like I said, my gut reaction would be all of the above. The changing regulations, you need a large team to keep up with those. Those happen all the time, both in labor code, tax laws, all that sort of thing. And then understanding the diverse international laws. I mean, that's Gina's team. We have a whole team to keep up to date with those. What do you think, Gina? Were you surprised?
No, I wasn't surprised because keeping up with the regulations and the diverse international laws, understanding the complexities, it's so challenging, especially in the space of hiring global workers. I'm not at all surprised. These are challenges that all companies face in today's society, and hopefully we can give you some insight on how to challenge those. But not at all surprised. It's in line with, what our clients indicate.
Well,
Yeah, I
here's the
think
final results,
ensuring that,
ladies.
yeah, the payroll accuracy one from the different regions as well. Not surprised there as a payroll person. It's relearning everything everywhere you go. So very good.
Yeah, it seems like your regulations and laws are the vast majority of the challenges for your audience. A little bit different with accuracy of payroll and the cost. Very minimal on that one.
Yeah,
Yes.
and happy to see that the cost of hiring local expertise is not the biggest challenge because, as we'll discuss later, it's very vital when you're dealing with global workers.
Well, I will give it back over to you, ladies, for you to continue.
According to the World Economic Forum, organizations identify two items as key barriers to preventing industry transformation: skill gaps in the local labor market and the inability to attract talent. Also on the list is outdated or inflexible regulatory framework and skill gaps among organizational leadership. Um, I would say that this also doesn't surprise me at all. I hear this quite regularly, especially when it comes to the inability to attract talent. That's definitely a barrier to companies' flexibility and transformation, as well as skill gaps in the market. What are some of your thoughts, Angie?
Yeah, the skill gaps definitely I see. I wonder how much demographic changes play in that percentage because you can kind of see the developed markets are aging, and sort of there's this youth bulge, as I like to call it, in the emerging economies. So we've got kind of skills and that demographics that I think would probably add up in the first one, and the inability to attract your talent really changed after COVID. So I'm not surprised that a lot of people want to be remote, be hybrid, work where they are. This pick up and move to your job kind of went away. We're seeing it dissipate as the years go on. So that's not surprised at either of those, Gina.
I agree. Another lovely survey, according to marketresearch.com, the EOR market space is projected to reach over 6 billion by 2028 and projected previously over 4 billion in 2021. Thus, there's a significant rise. These numbers are reflective of the growing needs of the companies. And just to clarify, the projected reach is 6.8 billion, not 6.6 billion. But you get the point. Over 6 billion EOR market size projected to increase. These numbers are reflective of the growing needs of companies. In the post-pandemic world, the advance of remote workers Long gone are the days of when your supervisor and peers and colleagues would sit next to you in a cubicle, especially in the rise of the post-pandemic world. So we see the ever increasing need and desire for EOR services. And that, I think, is going to only just rise even further.
Yes, I think so too. And it's so exciting because with that rise, I mean, it increases the opportunity, but it also increases the challenges. So I think that's what we're here to talk about, because uh, when you're borderless, there's a lot more challenges involved.
Now, the case for a flexible global workforce. Why is it so important? How did we get to this space? There's been a significant shift in the employment landscape. We're living in a world with limitless borders. We have some clients that are based in the US who have market needs to hire workers in France, the Netherlands, Spain. We work in an international company where I have an ongoing joke where I wake up in the morning to Israel and I go to sleep to Singapore. So we're living in a world of limitless borders, dealing with different time zones. The rise of freelance and gig workers in this modern economy, the gig revolution, that just increases the need for companies to grow, and the demand for flexible contingent workers, hiring of freelancers for specific projects. It's just a different world. And just what does it mean to be flexible? It's essentially adapting to the changing market needs and business needs of the company.
Right. I think that flexible, it goes both ways to increasing, decreasing, and it's pivoting on at that moment and being able to move forward in whatever direction easily, smoothly, and with knowledge, I think is very important. So the ease of transitioning from EOR to payroll and back again is really what we're here to talk to you about. And, Gina and I have spent a lot of time passing it back from EOR world to payroll world, where we're from different sides of this coin. I think the most important thing when we go through that ease is just going in with open eyes. And we'll cover this more, but I think, Gina, we have another polling.
We do.
Indeed. So, to challenge everyone on our second polling question of the day, what, in your opinion, is the biggest challenge when transitioning between different employment models? Examples from EOR to payroll. Would it be A, understanding the compliance requirements, B, managing changes in payroll and benefits, C, ensuring data accuracy and consistency, or D, integrating new systems and processes? And we'll just give everyone again just a short time to answer this question and see what kind of results we get, ladies. We have quite a variety coming in right now. Anything of unusual expectation here?
Gina, I don't. I think they're all have their points, and but it's kind of interesting to see what everyone's opinion is. The compliance, definitely, I always expect that to be top. So the data accuracy and consistency kind of surprises me a little bit.
Right. And managing changes in payroll and benefits. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised because this is payroll org, but that can definitely be daunting as well. But certainly understanding compliance requirements, it's so challenging. Even when you're well versed in this space, the laws are ever changing, and that's always going to be a top challenge, or one of the biggest challenging when transitioning between different frameworks.
Yeah, I think the new system and the process is important to mention too, because if you can keep them the same, that eliminates that challenge altogether, right? So it is very interesting, because I really thought compliance would be a lot bigger.
Right. Well, that's good news.
That does seem to be the biggest challenge, especially on a global front. Very
Yeah,
true.
I see everyone saying all of above too. So yes, I agree.
We'll have to keep that in mind. One of these days we'll get that one added and we'll be good. Any last minute
Right.
comments before I give it over to you, ladies?
Right. One aspect to point out too, integrating new systems and processes. That's also a tough one as well, and I think that's consistent in today's economy when you're trying to focus on your core functions and then integrating systems. I think that that is a particular challenge as well that we see with our clients.
Right.
All right, excellent. Well, I'll give it back over to you for you to continue, ladies.
So let's go through like what a flexible global workforce strategy needs to entail. So that you've got that transitioning across different employee models, moving from the EOR to the payroll and back. And then point number two would be sorry, I think we went one side too many. Addressing unique workforce scenarios and looking at those, and then the third part of the strategy is maintaining that 100% compliance no matter what. So I think if you cover off those are your moving pieces. Did I miss anything, Gina? Do you think?
No, I think we're going to delve deeper into it, but those are essentially transition across different employment models. Those are three tools. If you have these three tools, it will definitely provide your company with a competitive edge into today's society, going from EOR, payroll, and back, addressing complexities, unique situations, and of course, all the daunting compliance piece.
Yes, the compliance. Yeah. So the different employee models from EOR and BARC, by being able to translate and move from one to the other, you're enhancing that agility. You're maximizing the efficiency if you can do it smoothly. Keeping your workers happy, I think, or empowering those workers are one of the things that we see as most important. People get upset when their life is thrown up in the air. So I think keeping things the same, from the same policies, processes, procedures from one to another and back, is what I see as important. What are your thoughts, Gina?
Right. Just to capitalize on that or piggyback on what you just said, I think it's important to have a seamless transition for the workers, a smooth transition. Although the company's business function has changed, the workers' experience should be the same. So having employment contracts ready to go when you're transitioning from one framework to the next. And just ensuring that the worker is always at ease and there's seamless onboarding processes.
Right.
Now, addressing unique workforce scenarios, how do you know when to choose between EOR and payroll? What is the best fit for your organization? And Angie touched on this a bit. In the EOR space, companies would seek to an EOR, employer of record services, where a third party serves as the legal employer because you don't have a legal entity in the jurisdiction where you want to hire workers. When the cost of establishing the entity is high, it can be very daunting to establish entities in other countries, dealing with the tax regulations, the regulation requirements, complying with audits. Sometimes it's quite frequent. It's advisable for companies to outsource that function so they can focus on the company. When you have few workers in a particular region, you want to streamline those onboarding processes. If you have one worker in France or the Netherlands or in Canada, you may want to outsource that to an employer of record, and also easing the burden of regulatory compliance, dealing with the tax regulations, understanding the different severance payments. Even within the US is funny because it's 50 many countries. Whereas in Canada, in California, upon terminations, you have to immediately pay severance or immediately pay what is due to the worker, any outstanding expenses, PTO, whereas in some other states, you can do it in the last paycheck. So each state has their own requirements. So dealing with EORs definitely can assist. Determining when to put workers on performance improvement plans, otherwise known as PIPs. You need to know the duration, the scope, implications of maternity leave and sick leave. So it's a whole beast when it comes to EOR services and working with global workers. That it's very advisable to have an EOR in those circumstances. Now, Angie, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say I agree with you because it's quite a gray area, and you from my experience, you learn by your errors. So it's so nice to have that expertise to rely on.
Absolutely. And when the company's needs increase, when you have a number of workers, when you're increasing market conditions and you have 30 workers in a particular region, then it may not make sense to use an EOR. Then you may want to look to establishing a local entity. And also in countries such as Germany, where there's 18 months restrictions on leasing workers, and if you have an increased need for workers, then you may want to look to payroll. So you have to look to the unique situation in determining the important framework. Now, how could you capitalize on market opportunities during these transitions? You want to be able to seamlessly tap into global talent. That's the key. Back to the Steve Jobs quote, you want to get the best workers. Mm-hmm. The way you can transition workers to EOR and payroll and back smoothly, you'll be able to tap into the greatest workers, the best talent, which provides you with a competitive edge, enabling scalability, seamless onboarding processes for the workers. It can be very frustrating for workers. Quite frankly, some of the workers, they don't care that you have to go to EOR or payroll and back. They want to make sure that they paid on time. They want to make sure that their contracts are in compliance. You just ensuring that there's flexibility in transferring compliance documents via EOR and payroll and back. And ultimately, what these will do is cultivate resilience for your company and unlock new avenues for growth. These are essential tools. These are the complaints we hear from workers in onboarding, having, negative experiences going to EOR and payroll and back.
Right. I think the other thing for the EOR sometimes, coming from the project world, oil and gas and mining, is a lot of times these companies, even if you want to set up an entity, there can be a 3-month, 6-month, even longer, I've seen, delay, and you need to hit the ground running. The EOR gives you that option to get on board. From a payroll perspective, I like to, when we started with the EOR, because it gives me the opportunity to learn from that in-country expertise, ask questions about the payroll and the compliance and the labor code, and have those people who already know on board. So it makes, as we move in and grow and get our company to set up, it always made it easier for us to move forward, because, those major blocks are already there to stand on. You're not standing on that sand.
I agree. Maintaining 100% compliance. I absolutely love this quote. And it's essentially the bread and butter of what I do. It's, if you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance. Absolutely love this quote from Paul McNulty, former U.S. Deputy Attorney General. Navigating global regulations is especially challenging. However, the consequences of not compliance do not outweigh compliance. It's a real issue, absolute real issue. For example, it's been all over the media within the past few months of big companies being fined for misclassifying workers. Instead of deeming them employees, they're classifying workers as contractors or freelancers, whether it be to evade paying taxes, contributing to a country's social security, or just oversight of the company. I find that clients, when it comes to the contracting space, will say, oh, this worker is a contractor. But ultimately, you want to conduct a test over the control over the worker's activities. Nonetheless, lack of compliance is a real issue. In the space of the United States, we find Department of Labor also finding companies for classifying workers as salaried employees instead of hourly employees that are entitled to overtime. The lack of compliance, in a nutshell, it's just not worth it. Not to mention the fees, the potential litigation, and quite frankly, the embarrassment, the risk to your company's reputation, that usually cannot be undone. So I can't stress enough the importance of compliance.
I think it stands true for the payroll side as well. I know everyone on the phone will understand when I say that dreaded payroll audits. So once you've kind of been caught or found out for non-compliance, those become too regular. And, there's always those penalties and fees. And again, your reputation. And sometimes I think the greater damage is with the local tax authorities, because trying to get through to them and get out of the audit phase is one of those challenges that I think we've all faced. I think we have another polling.
We do indeed, ladies. Our third and last polling question of the day for everyone. How confident are you in your organization's ability to navigate global compliance? A, very confident, B, somewhat confident, or C, not confident at all. Let's give everyone a little while on this one. I have a feeling the answers to this one are going to be really interesting for the two of you.
Yes. Yeah, we had a discussion on this one, exactly.
Yeah, this is not going to be one of those all of the above answers either, I can tell you.
Right.
Yeah, I think the confidence comes with that education and how much new is in there, and to be very confident you're probably operating in places that you've been for a while, and you understand all the rules, regulations, changes. So the somewhat confident doesn't surprise me at all, Gina.
It doesn't surprise me. Right. So. It doesn't surprise me at all. And it's actually encouraging. It's a good thing that, individuals are somewhat confident. You don't want to be too confident because it's difficult, even for someone who handles offboarding globally or deals in the global space or in payroll as Angie. There's always challenges. The law is always changing. Compliance it's extremely daunting. And even if coming from someone in the space, you have to constantly re-educate yourself in this field. And coming from one region and dealing with workers in another or globally, things are done so differently around the world.
So I'm laughing at the comments. Jesus, take the wheel. I agree.
Yes, I was going to mention that. The comments were good. I really like that one. The one that Isaac had up there was funny. Nervous, but going with God. Okay, yes. All right. We're offering it up to somebody else. We don't want to deal with it. We're going to put it in somebody else's hands. I like that.
I always express it as a Hail Mary. Let's throw a Hail Mary at this one. I think with the confidence, like I said, I'm actually surprised that it's that high, to be honest with you, just because of the changing landscape, the changing rules, I just think compliance is something that's always a work in progress. You always can get better. You can always get tighter. You can, process, procedure all leads to that compliance.
Indeed. Well, you finished with 18% very confident, 64% somewhat, and 16, I'm not confident at all. I'd be in that boat if it were me, but
Yeah. I think
As long
that's
as they have
good.
oars in that boat, they have a way to get to shore. So yeah.
And
So
thank you
with
for
that,
that comment. That was great. It's good to
all
laugh.
right, it is. So I'll give it back over to you, ladies, to continue.
Now, we've touched on compliance. We all understand that compliance is important. It's not worth it. But how do you do that? How do you comply? How do you make the right decisions when your office is in one country and then you have global workers all around the world? You have a worker in California, you have a worker in Colorado, you have a worker in France, you have a worker in Netherlands. How do you comply? Um, I can't stress enough the importance of having local experts on the ground where you have global workers. This is absolutely vital, consulting with global advisors in the countries where your workers are, employed in, because for example, terminating a worker in one country is different from offboarding a worker in another. Intellectual property rights in one country is different from another
Mhm.
country, and even within the same country, it looks different. If you have a worker that's employed directly by a legal entity, that offboarding is going to look different from offboarding a worker under the EOR model. So you really need local experts on the ground. Even if you have access to the statute, the law books, you really need experts to interpret it for you. And Angie and I had a conversation about Canada, and the contract may say the notice period is 2 weeks, but you have to factor in case law. And that's
Yes.
something that you won't be privy to if you don't have access to local experts on the ground. Tailored guidance for unique situations, PIP plans, performance improvement plans. Under the EOR model, you're not the employer. The company is
Right.
not the employer. You need to work with the employer of record to have tailored specific improvement plans. How do you treat workers on sick leave? What are the communications that go out to the company or to the rest of the colleagues? These are just some of the nuances to consider. Another aspect, which I think, up to date knowledge, expertise, make sure you have access to top of the line databases to research critical issues. The laws are forever changing. I receive on a weekly basis alerts, global employment law alerts,
Mhm.
just so I can it can jog my memory, so when I have that particular issue I can remember, oh, this changed. This is just to stay up to date with the laws, and that's something easy that you can do to stay on top of the litigation, constantly getting alerts of the new laws and the new changes. I remember recently I got an alert about the FTC, banning non-competes, and that has been a hot issue in the U.S. And I learned about that first from the alert. There's been proposals and there's been bills, but it was the alert that I got that made me go and research the issue. And now, when clients want to draft non-competes in the U.S., we have to be mindful. There's certain conversations that we need to have. Um,
Yeah.
and I would say I can't, one that is underestimated is the local cultural and linguistic nuances. When you have a particular worker overseas, you need to be mindful of their culture. Something as simple as honoring different PTO days. It's a holiday today in Israel, half day today and tomorrow. So you'll one half of your staff that's out of the office and another half of your staff that's working. So keeping in mind those cultural aspects. Also, in offboarding work conversation with a worker in France that's extremely litigious is quite different than offboarding a worker in the US where there's at will employment. In Europe, you may want to communicate basis for termination to make the workers feel comfortable. In other countries, you can simply say your services are no longer needed. It's even different state to state. California is, the lead is in the lead in the liberal states in the U.S. when it comes to employee rights. But with the assistance of experts those who have dealt with those specific type of cases, you'll be well equipped with the tools to navigate global compliance with ease. And the more you've handled terminations or compliance issues in different regions, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. I think from the payroll side, looking at it just from payroll, those linguistic nuances and cultural nuances, that's when you look at my team, we're all from different home countries. Even just between Canada and the US, having worked and spent most of my career in the US, I've just returned home to Canada, and I see that cultural and sometimes the linguistic nuances, as well. The update local regulatory expertise. I like, Gina, like we discussed, just going from Canada to the US and understanding, how we tax employees in Canada is based on the employer's location, very different than the reciprocity and the work location in the US, the termination laws, and look how good, like close we are. We're very, very similar countries, and we're vastly different in those sort of fields. So, and I think the unique workforce scenarios, Canada and the US, we are both grow up understanding a global mentality, because let's face it, you have California, we have Quebec. So we're like a bunch of countries all within our own country. So I think, globalization and this global payroll is a little bit easier because we've all had to do it. So yeah, I think, and then in the chat, Jeanette mentioned the time zones. And that is a big struggle as well. Like when you're dealing in India or PNG, Australia, the Middle East, you end up, how do you work 24 hours a day? So I think the time zones is a good point. We didn't mention that one. So having that local team, you don't have to worry about those. Your management can happen somewhat outside those time zones.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point with the time zones, even in the context of terminations, synchronizing when do you want a termination notice to go out to a worker. You have to make sure you're on the right time zone. You don't want to alert them too early or too late. Thank you for raising that. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, I just saw that. Other than the dark conversation, which is also a good one. I love when you guys make me smile. So.
Now, building a flexible global workforce. The future of the global workforce can only be maintained with the most agile companies being able to compete and retain workers. When your workforce is flexible, when you can go to EOR, when you can go to payroll or freelance work, you can hire globally with confidence, maintaining a network of vendors to assist you on the ground, retaining the top talent. For example, if you have a particular worker that has vast knowledge, you don't want that knowledge to leave the company. Being able to accommodate and maybe retain that worker under the EOR model. Also reducing company costs to scalability to the needs of the business. If you have a significant increase in workers, then maybe the business, it makes sense to open up an entity. Ultimately, flexibility will provide, when you're able to compete, when you're able to retain workers, workers are going to you're going to attract the best talent. It's going to enhance your company's professional reputation above all.
Yeah, I think too, to be able to hire the best, no matter where they are in the world, with ease, I think that is so exciting, and not have to move them around, not have to put the cost into it. So you're hiring the best at a reduced cost. How wonderful is that?
It's amazing. And I think that it's underestimated at how important it is to be flexible in today's society.
Yes, I think so too. So let's just touch on technology. And it's kind of funny that you're giving me this slide to talk about first. So when I started to do payroll and finance, I learned in a big ledger. I know you guys are going to be like, what? So what I see in technology is so amazing. You've got the standardization of the processes, and it drives it. So no matter who's touching it on your team, they're doing everything the same. That's where I think technology is amazing. The reducing of errors. How many times have I checked a payroll summary and still let an error go through in my career of 37 years? A lot. And these bots and this AI knowledge and all these things take away that the errors, Gina. So it's so exciting. So all of that leads to that boosting of efficiencies. You have more time because everyone on the phone is, on the call is going to understand when I say, oh, you're just a payroll person. If we can now pivot and add to that strategy, add to the rate of return on investment, free up our time. That's for me. I just see the technology so amazing, and then to be able to forecast and have better reporting, that's not clunky or time consuming. Although I love all my Excels, it's so nice that I see that now we can do this all automatically. So I think this technology leads to that, diverse workforce everywhere, lets us do all these things, manage so many countries from one desktop. 150 countries, and I can open my desktop and see them all. So bless technology. It's not going to replace us. It's going to give us more, be able to be more strategic and have a seat at the table.
Right. I definitely agree. And it would be nearly impossible to hire global workers without technology. Just imagine trying to compliantly pay workers in foreign currencies, ensuring that the market rate is up to date. So this is the wave of the future, and it's only going to assist us, let us do our jobs better. And also cloud-based platforms. This has actually been a huge assistance to HR functions with cloud-based platforms, streamlining processes, and just making the onboarding experiences for the workers overall much smoother and streamlined.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no more changing people's banks. They can go do it themselves.
So essentially, when it comes to flexibility, at being able to adapt to market conditions and change, is going to assist your company in being innovative, being agile, having growth, and being the most competitive as possible. It's absolutely essential and critical to your company's success. Whether you want to retain payroll workers with the increased demand of the company, EOR workers in complex employee-friendly regions, and you want to outsource so you can focus on core business functions. Whether you need an agency of record for freelancers or contractors, or direct contracting solutions in the AOR, under AOR, to outsource misclassification. Flexibility is absolutely necessary, and sky's is the limit in today's limitless borders world. Compliance is very daunting, but as we indicated, it's essential. It will minimize the lawsuits, decrease the turnover, and enhance the company's reputation, so you can focus on core business objectives. The world is changing. Whether we like it or not, it's changing. It will continue to change, and companies must change with it to strive. During the pandemic, the landscape of what it means to be a worker has forever changed. And I say for the better. Workers are there can be debates on both sides of the coin. But it can lead flexibility in a nutshell leads to overall worker happiness, which boosts productivity for the company. And only with this type of flexibility are you going to have a competitive edge, innovation in the growing landscape in today's society.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. I've been one of the fortunate ones and worked remotely when not traveling since 2010. But as a mother of six, all mine have grown, and I think how lovely it would have been to be able to do that. How much peace and happiness and happy employees means you're going to get the best, and the best are going to stay with you. So yeah, I just think it's very exciting times to see all the options that we have.
Absolutely. And another aspect too, I love being able to have a conversation with an attorney in Israel and then in Singapore and in Germany and getting different insights on aspects of compliance. So I think it just increases our competitiveness as a society, being flexible and being open and learning other cultures. And I think that it's only for the betterment of the company. And the only way you're going to be able to compete with global companies is to retain the best talent, regardless of where they may be seated.
Right. No, it's amazing.
Any last minute comments, ladies, before we get to the Q&A?
No, I think it's so exciting. We're on this trajectory that's so exciting to see, and it. I just think it will be amazing to see where it goes. So.
Yeah, I think just being able to keep that in mind, although it is challenging, it is difficult. Another aspect that I want to mention and leave you with is reassessing the business functions, reevaluating the needs of the company so you can remain flexible. We are at times resistant to change, and it goes against human nature. But the more you reassess and the more adaptable the company becomes, then the more competitive edge you'll provide your organization.
Yeah.
So you ready for some questions, ladies? We have a few.
Okay,
sure.
Let's have them.
All right. The very first one is from Kathy. Now, I realize that over the course of the presentation, you've mentioned a variety of issues that are obstacles to global compliance. But if you had to pick one, what's the biggest obstacle for companies to remain compliant in a global workforce?
Oh. That is a I think, Gina, you can add to this, but I think it's the understanding in the global workforce is understanding the ins and outs of all the local labor laws. Like it's overwhelming. It's always changing. Just getting the grasp of that, to me, is one of the biggest challenges ever. Some days, it just seems overwhelming. So I don't know from your side of the things, but just that's what I see from the payroll side, is understanding the requirements. Someone had mentioned in the chat about things like minimum wage and minimum vacation entitlements, and as a payroll and knowing how we accrue and pay, and that is by far my biggest challenge today.
I agree, and to further add, understanding the laws in different countries. For example, when you're coming from a U.S. perspective, it's very difficult to understand that these workers are entitled to a year's severance. It's daunting.
You can't change their contracts.
I need to move. So it's understanding those nuances and how employee or employer friendly different regions are, and changing your mindset, right? Because if you come from a space where you're dealing with only US workers, Canadian workers, or workers in APAC, it's completely different, and we all have to work together if you're in a global workforce. So it's just changing your mindset and understanding the culture. And the only way you can is settle a case is by understanding the culture. You have to get into the mind of the other side, and you can't do that if you're stuck in your mindset.
Right.
Need to venture outside your own silo a little bit, huh?
Right.
All right, ladies, thank you for that one. The next question we have is from Joan. She has a bit of a scenario for you. We have U.S. employees who provide services and are working in Canada every quarter or monthly, but still coming back to the U.S. location office. Do we need to have payroll in Canada set up for these employees, or should we contact EOR?
It depends. So I would have to understand more about the permanent establishment. Do they have a
Mhm.
permanent establishment? There's the option to report in, withhold federal taxes. The EOR, the EOR is a good option if you're talking about a couple, and because you don't want those employees traveling back and forth, causing that sort of corporate. You don't want your corporate tax team on your back for that. So kind of need some more information, but the EOR is probably, I would have a conversation and start there. It's definitely your easier and cheaper option if you're talking about probably less than 20 people. So, because depending on the province too, because just always remember, Quebec is like California. So anything I say about Canada, please ignore when we talk about Quebec. So,
Yeah, I
Actually, I think
agree.
she was talking specifically Alberta and Calgary.
oh, Alberta and Calgary. So again, you have to look at the permanent, like, so once you have those permanent establishment, and it's a bigger question and a harder question to answer without all the nitty gritty details. But no matter what, I would have that conversation and make sure your corporate tax team is involved. But yes, if you're working in Canada, like the US, you should be looking at withholding and remitting local taxes.
I agree.
Excellent. The next question we have is from Geraldine. She's indicating that in a previous company, they relied on outsourcing, specifically four different accounting firms for local taxation rules, pension, etc. She's asking, do you all outsource or do you handle it in-house with people of your own?
So from a payroll side, there's some countries that we do depend on outsourced models. And then, like I said to you, when you look at the Americas, I have Canadian, US, Mexican, Central Americans, a Brazilian. So we've kind of got that in-house expertise in some areas, and also always a partnership in country, to make sure that we are covering all our basics. Gina, do you want to address from an EOR?
Right. From an EOR perspective, we outsource some aspects, certain tax questions where we have to get to specific experts, but for the most part, everything is in-house. We also have partnerships with vendors in 180 countries. So wherever we have an EOR, we have a HR personnel that we can refer to. We have access to outside counsels that we can refer to. So we have a large network of partners when it comes to EOR, because EOR, when you're managing employees, there's day-to-day questions from workers. So you kind of want it in-house. And also in Papaya, we have attorneys in each sector of the world. I'm in the US. We have one in Germany that's, has familiarity with European laws. We have one in APAC that can touch on Asia market. And also we have someone based in Israel. So in addition, with our partnership, we do have in-house attorneys that just triple check and make sure that there's compliance on all fronts.
Right.
Interesting.
So it's kind of a mesh of in a lot of in-house, but not ignoring that out of house knowledge and experience.
Right.
taking advantage of the experience wherever you can find it.
Exactly. Exactly. I think so.
Seems like the smart way to operate. The next question, and probably the last one we have, is if you were to compare the EOR model to payroll, what's the biggest challenges in hiring workers under each?
I'll address EOR. You can address payroll, Angie.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think hiring. Yeah, that's a really tough one, Gina. I think from a payroll standpoint, hiring, you have to have the entity there. So that's probably your biggest challenge is that to be an employee, they're going to be an employee of your company. So that focused payroll knowledge and needs, that HR background, that you know all the things, finance, your tax filings. There's a lot of things into it to just hire an employee that way. And you usually find, depending on the size, it's not so much the personnel, but many companies try to open up in Canada, but run Canada from using US HR. And so that usually leads to some of the payroll or US payroll people not familiar with other countries or that. So I think that in-house expertise is where I think is the biggest challenge from that side.
Right. On the EOR side, absolutely. I would say one of the biggest challenges, especially if you're dealing with white collar workers, is intellectual property. That's a big challenge when it comes to EOR. That's the number one thing our clients want to see in their employment contracts. However, some countries have restrictions on whether the employment contract can reference the end client, ensuring that your IP rights are protected, the non-confidentiality, non-solicitation clauses, non-compete clauses. Those are where it gets tricky under the EOR model, and you have to foster creative solutions to ensure that your rights are protected. Another challenge is you want to make the worker feel as if they're employed with your company. But however, sometimes if your company has a specific notice requirement, you have to honor the PTO payment. If your company offers 15 days payment, you have to honor a greater obligation under the EOR model if it's 30 days. So there may be different agreements between workers in the same company. So that could be a bit challenging under the EOR model.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it seems really complex. Yeah, I think it does, but it seems really complex. I don't know. If it were me and I was just standing there with two choices in my hands, I'd be going, "Oh my God, I have no idea what to pick here." I guess it depends on where you are and having to look at the circumstance, the very specific circumstance of what you're trying to deal with, and how you all manage to handle all those changes and subtle things. I'd be pulling my hair out.
You do some things.
Yeah, you do.
I'll bet you do, but I'm very grateful that you're able to accomplish what you do, because that gives us all our paychecks. So I have no gripes whatsoever. I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any last minute comments you want to make before we wrap up our session for today?
Oh, no, just thank you. It's been the first time, like I said, usually I'm on the chat with all of you. So it's a very different world to sit on this side. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and everyone for the good laughs in the chats, like always, and the good questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for being an amazing audience. This was such a fun experience. And don't hesitate to reach out. Gina Dorsalis on LinkedIn. If you have any questions or any feedback, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Gina and Angie, for this incredibly informative and useful webinar, and Papaya Global for sponsoring the process. For our attendees today, you will receive an email with the on-demand access link approximately 24 hours after this webinar concludes. And to view our Global Payroll magazine, news, education opportunities, and much more, do access our website at global.payroll.org. We do want to know what you think about today's webinar. Your comments are essential to the development and continuing success of Payroll.org's educational offerings. Take a few moments to complete the survey that'll open in a separate browser tab once the webinar concludes. And with that, we want to again thank our speakers, Gina and Angie, and our attendees for joining us. This concludes our webinar. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you all next time.